Hey everyone, welcome to the Industry Show. I'm your host, Nitin Bajaj, and joining me today is the Atul Satija. Atul, welcome on the show.
Thank you so much for having me, Nitin. Glad to be here.
Pleasure is all ours. So let's talk about who is Atul.
Hmm. Very interesting question, Nitin. Uh, I grew up very aware of the birth lottery that I got, the ovarian lottery, because I saw my first cousins around me who didn't.
Mhm.
Uh, and they had to be almost like supported by my father growing up. So a part of me grew up with a very strong desire to do social impact work because poverty is something that I experienced up close while having a safe childhood. So that's a core part of me, which I discovered much later in life, how important it was to me. I think the second part of me, which is an important strand, is my career at Google and then InMobi
Mhm.
that build a certain level of, call it, belief that if you think about the problems the right way, you can actually solve them at insane scale. And that resonated with me. So I think scale hunger, while I'm in the social sector now, is what makes me to some extent.
Mhm.
And I think the third one here is my natural disposition is of very high energy, action orientation,
Mhm.
and almost an incorrigible optimist. Like I just permanently believe things are going to happen. And I think between the intersection of optimism, scale, hunger, and trying to do meaningful, impactful work is, you can call it my ikigai.
Well, by any means and any definition, you're a rare breed. And, I really look up to you and all the discussions we've had over the years. And you are the exquisite mix between the kind of running things as a for profit in the non-profit, but really what that means is and translates to is driving impact to scale. And what I would love to for you to share with us is, typically we ask about what people do and what is the impact, and you're doing two, I would say, two different things, but at massive scale and massive impact. On one end, you have give, and on the other end, you have nudge. So I want to take a kind of a step back and ask you a bigger, broader question and say,
Mhm.
what does your day look like? What do you do for a living? What inspires you to get up and get going? And what motivates you? What are the factors that you look at and say, this is where I want to move the needle?
Yeah. Wow. There are multiple questions in that. So let
Yes.
me try to attempt to stitch them together in some way. So Nitin, like I said in the previous question, I chose to do poverty alleviation work.
Hmm.
And I think the journey for the last 8 years since I've been doing it full time has been of a child in a classroom curiously learning how to do it in a better fashion than what we did yesterday.
Hmm.
And hence the journey has evolved. Like you said, we run two nonprofits now, Give and the Nudge, in parallel. I think what stitches them all together is the need to say that look, there was never a better time in India to do poverty alleviation work. Because if you look at it, there are many countries that are themselves so poor that they
Hmm.
cannot solve for their poor. They don't have resources to solve for their poverty. And other countries are countries that are rich, but the people are also all rich, right? The
Hmm.
actual poverty rates are very, very negligible now.
True.
But India is one of those very few, if not the only country, which is a large now rich country with many people still left who are living in poverty.
True.
Say roughly about 190 to 200 million people by
Hmm.
Niti Aayog's latest report. And that is where the opportunity lies, I feel. My generation can actually see a poverty free India within our lifetime
Hmm.
because we have the resources, the
True.
will, the talent, and the enabling conditions are all there, right? Digital access, financial access, social capital, and the resources. So I feel that it's a good timing to actually spend your life doing this kind of work. And the way this all comes together is that, look, if you have to do poverty alleviation, it will happen in big waves. The
Mm-hmm.
way we saw the white revolution, the microfinance movement, the tiger economy's growth, we saw Chinese manufacturing ecosystem build out, India's IT industry ecosystem build out. So what we are really trying to do is how do we increase the probability of big waves through capital, which is the give journey,
Mm-hmm.
through talent and specific solutions that might work through the nudge journey, and enabling all that through policy ecosystem, which we engage with very actively in the work we do. So that's all we are trying to do: talent, capital, policy, and also technology to bring together for creating large scale social change waves in the country.
Well, first off, I have to applaud you for being so humble in giving credit to others, the ecosystem, and what have you, and saying that it's all the ecosystem that is bringing this about. But it's not, right? It's really you as a visionary, as a leader, that is bringing the ecosystem together to say we're at the right place at the right time to deploy the time, talent, and capital, and and also capitalize on the policy to say this is where we need to be as a generation, as an administration, and as a country to make that generational change so we can make a true impact and move the needle. So kudos to you and congratulations to you for making that impact at that level of scale. Both nudge and give have truly moved the needle. And I would love for you to elaborate on not just the size and scale of the operations, but the impact you and the team have been able to accomplish over the past few years, and what you're looking to do in the next few months and years to come. So please, share
Yeah,
that vision and impact with us.
yeah. So Nitin, on the give side, what we are really doing is we say our mission is to make giving bigger and better.
Mhm.
The more you give and the better you give, the more impact you create on the ground, even if it is through the non-profits that actually do that work on the ground every day.
Mhm.
I think on the give side, we are deploying about $75 million, $200 million a year on the ground. Obviously, the money comes from philanthropists and corporates and foundations and works done by non-profits. We are mostly a conduit. But through the work that we do, we are able to partner with about 500 to 1,000 plus organizations more directly,
Mhm.
and about 3,500 nonprofits through the platform that we have built that enables them to share their information with donors, etc. And I think collectively they go on to serve tens of millions of people across the country every year. On the nudge side, we are a livelihoods focused poverty alleviation organization. Directly, we are working with people who are getting skilled and getting entry level service sector jobs, or ultra poor communities, tribal, uh, agrarian, nomadic, vulnerable communities across the country. We are working with 150,000 families or so like that in UP, in Jharkhand, in Tripura, Meghalaya, Assam, West Bengal, Rajasthan, Karnataka, etc. Through our indirect work of enabling other nonprofits through our incubator, accelerator, and other programs, I think it would be around another 20 million people that we are serving across the country. Where we are going with this is that, look, the probability of creating a large scale social change, like it happened in microfinance or white revolution or
Mhm.
Aadhaar or UPI, uh, to enable these journeys, you need to kind of really find out what works. So not just focusing on what we call the three P's of social scale. You
Mhm.
prototype what works on the ground.
Mhm.
If something works, you propagate that in the ecosystem with other actors, could be non-profits, for-profits, or governments, and then see what is it that we need to do to enable proliferation of that the way microfinance is proliferated.
Mhm.
So it's a journey of finding what really works on the ground.
Mhm.
And if you find something, can we support that journey to actually go to insane scale? And I'm hoping in the next 5 years, we create one such large or
Mhm.
contribute one such large social change wave happening in the country or created in the country through our work.
And I love how you throw these numbers as if they don't mean anything. 150,000 and 20 million, and it's just like, yeah, we're doing this, we're making this happen. I love that. And the humility that you bring to all of this is amazing. So congratulations and thank you and kudos for everything that you've been able to envision and bring to life through the work you do, through the team you have in working with. None of this is easy, right? Going to the nooks and corners of these parts of India that are, for all purposes, considered third world and fourth world, and being able to not just bring them to life, but showing them that there is a future here. It's amazing. So hats off to you for what you do. You could have been doing a lot more and making a lot more for yourself in being in the corporate world that you have been and you've had access to. But leaving all of that behind and focusing on making a generational change for for the country, for the macroeconomic situation. These are massive numbers. So I can't thank you enough. Now,
Well, it's uh, at a certain level very selfish, Nitin.
it is.
As we all want to say that, reality is if I don't find enough meaning and joy in this, I won't be able to do it. So it's just what currency you choose for what time you put and what you get back. I get enough back from doing this as much as we feel we are creating impact. But yeah, thank you so much for the generous words.
No, being in the nonprofit world, we know that this is as much of a selfish journey, but that selfishness could manifest itself in making monetary gains or making a generational change for the community. And we have that choice. We have the power of making that choice and determination of going this way or going that way. And you're in that selfish journey, you're making a selfless choice. And I want to applaud you for that because, you know, what you're going after is the long term, is, what will help the community, what will help us, what will help a generation to realize their dreams, their values, their uh, capabilities. And
Mhm.
as selfish as it is, it's not. So, let's not belittle that in in the bigger context of humility. I've known you to be extremely humble and to put kind of all of this in, yeah, that's okay, we this is what we do, this is what we have to do. But it's a humongous undertaking, and it takes someone with that vision and with that leadership skill to put all of this in perspective and lead an entire team and generation to believe in this, because that's what it takes to make a true difference and a true change. So thank you. Let's acknowledge that and inspire an entire team and an entire generation, because that's really what it's going to take to deliver on a true change. So I really applaud you on that. And
Thank you.
no, it has to be acknowledged. And that said, what I would love to understand is, making the changes that you are making, what's the one big challenge you face and your team faces that uh, that people need to understand and hear about?
Yeah. So, Nitin, I think there is so much action that is happening on the ground across the country, whether it is this action being enabled by government using the taxpayers' money to create social security schemes or programs and all kinds of activity on the ground, or it is non-profits doing great work on the ground day in, day out. And all of us have done this work with great intent, right? Wanting to create impact and change some life outcomes and stuff like that. I think what the global evidence ecosystem has increasingly now started to prove is that most of this action on the ground is not really as impactful as we think it is.
Mm-hmm.
And very few things really work when we look at beyond the obvious. So the biggest challenge that we are facing is look in livelihoods, which is what we are focused on. Like, how do you economically empower a family, or in simplistic terms, how do we make sure that a family is financially independent, right?
Mm-hmm.
In that journey, very few things are the ones that actually are things that work and can scale. You
Mm-hmm.
can find things that work at very small scale. You find things at large scale that don't work. And there are a lot of in betweens. A little bit to impact is there, and you can do a little bit more of that. But finding something that works and can scale is a very hard one. And globally, GiveWell has found 3, 4 such solutions that they put in their own platform. What works in livelihoods, there are only few. We have seen that turned out to be true as well in India.
Mm-hmm.
Like, there is not enough evidence of all the work that we all do, which we can say, okay, this really works and can scale. And we know it has to be simple enough, cheap enough, good enough, and
Mm-hmm.
then it can scale. But that's very hard one. So a lot of our efforts are going in saying, how do we prototype within the nudge through our work?
Mm-hmm.
How do we seed such activity in the market so more solutions at work are, call it, created, invented,
Mm-hmm.
prototype? Or we put a smelling mechanism in the ecosystem saying, okay, so much is happening. Maybe there are ones that really work, but they have not been evidenced enough, or
Mm-hmm.
we have not used the lens of, okay, let's study whether it really works or not. So I think between a discovery process, creation process, and uh, uh, call it a little bit of
Execution.
tinkering with stuff to ourselves, we are using all these means to say, okay, is there something that works that we can scale? We have a few, but we would love for more such solutions to be there that we can actually explore how to scale.
I love the for-profit execution for a non-profit model, because that that leaves that doesn't leave any kind of, people consider nonprofits to be softer on the execution, but you're really running this as businesses and saying, how can my ultimate goal is to go out of business, right? Because if everything worked and everything
Yeah.
scaled to how it should be, then I don't have a reason to exist. So I love that model. And I meant to say this in a few minutes ago. To me, and this may be a little old school because it's probably gone out of fashion, but you're the Jack Dorsey in the nonprofit world. You're running two very successful nonprofits at scale and bringing that impact to the world and to the economies and the communities that really matter at the size and scale that nobody has ever seen or heard of. And again, ever since we got to connect and talked about the work you do and why you do it, I've been blown. And I'm just so excited to bring this to our audience and to our community, that Give and Nudge are doing the work that you are leading them to do. Now, that said, you know, with challenges come opportunities. And I'm excited to hear about the opportunities that you're excited about. So please tell me about the one that is getting you all jittery and excited.
Yeah. So Nitin, in the pursuit of finding what really works,
Mm-hmm.
in 2018 and 19 beginning, we chanced upon something that's now called Cash Plus Care, Cash Plus programs, or graduation programs, which is, how do you take a family in extreme poverty through a carefully sequenced steps out of extreme poverty in a period of time, defined period of time. We tried that through a pilot. We saw the results and we got very excited, saying, "Look, it works." And and then the game was, look, if it really works, how do you take it to, let us say, the bottom 5 million, 10 million families? 5 million families is almost 25 million people. That's in Australia, right?
Yep.
So we took a goal saying that we'll take 5 million families out of extreme poverty in a decade. That's roughly 25 million people, like I was saying. But it will take roughly $3 to $5 billion, right? Given the cost of taking a family sustainably out of poverty. So we are on this business plan right now. Our goal is to take 1 million families in 5 years on this path of graduation. That's 1.5 New Zealand's, 5 million people. And in a decade, that hopefully will get to 5 million families or so. In that journey, now we are 1.5 years into that, call it a business plan of sorts, to say, how do we now scale it? And we are lucky that in the last 1.5 years, we've been able to get two central ministries to appreciate that the design works and they should invest behind that. We have two state governments that are putting state treasury capital into it. Where we stand right now, we have $100 million plus activated from the governments to invest in that. That's roughly 100,000 families. And we are hoping that in the next year or so, it will start to get to 300 to $500 million, and hopefully in a few years, $1 billion. And that will actually allow us to get these families on the path of this graduating out of poverty. And super excited about it. And I really think that the role that Nudge will end up taking here, given government is deploying this capital and government machinery is implementing it, is of how do we make sure that we are able to support government in their vision of doing this by bringing technology, technical assistance, cadre training, livelihood research, M&E frameworks, SOPs, impact assessment, etc., so that we know that we are a partner along the way in the journey when government's prioritizing it. So super excited about this ultra, we call it the End Ultra Poverty program.
I love how you put these numbers across with such humility and attributing all of this to luck. Right? It's sheer hard work, it's sheer vision on your part, on the rest of your team to think about it, to put this into the very detailed steps it takes to bring this to life, to bring this to fruition. Again, congratulations and kudos to you to be able to say this with such humility. The numbers you're talking about are massive. These are, you're literally putting countries at a time to lifetime generational changes. And it's just amazing to hear you put across these numbers with such humility and confidence that this is not something that, I work with a lot of startups that say, oh, we're going to be $100 million in 5 years. And I know for a fact that 3% of them or less than that will ever make it anywhere close to it. But I do know at the same time, in the same breath, that when you say it, that there is a 99% plus chance that these numbers will happen because these are rooted in reality. And you've done the math and you're being a pessimist.
Like the say in India, right? Aapke muh mein ghee shakkar.
Yes.
I hope we are able to meaningfully get governments to prioritize and invest in that. But like most startups, we are also forward looking. We are also inherently optimistic and excited about the opportunity and hoping to get there.
Atul,
But thank you.
no, knowing you, I know there is a 99% chance of success compared to the 3% chance of success with the startups that I work with and I invest in. So super, super excited about the opportunities that lie ahead of you and the team that's working on this. Now, I would love to know, as we look forward, I would love to take a step back and take a peek in the rearview mirror and ask you to share two instances One that blew your own expectations and became a success beyond your imagination, and another one that did not pan out to your plans and became a failure and lesson. So please share, two of those extremes with us.
Interesting. Uh, I think it's easier to share successes, far more difficult to share failures. So let me start with the failure first.
Sure.
Uh, uh, I think there are few which pointed me to the same learning. So I'll just put them together. See, in my past life, when I was running mandates which were regional or global on the business side, I've encountered uh, uh, multiple countries in the overall portfolio of scheme of things to say scale them. And Japan is one country where twice it fell in my portfolio. Once in Google when I was heading mobile business for Japan and APAC, and the second at InMobi, where Japan was early on a market that we invested in. In both the instances, I personally felt that while they may have been okay businesses, I really struggled to understand and crack the problem where you could actually scale it.
Mm-hmm.
A similar thing happened when we started doing admissions for our Gurukul programs at the Nudge from grassroots.
Mm-hmm.
And I realized that in all of these instances, I personally did not understand the cultural context of the audience that I was working with. In Japan, an average Japanese mobile user, I just could not connect to.
Mm-hmm.
And it is not just the language. I had language problems in China, in many other countries, South Korea, but I was able to make sense of a user there. But in Japan, because the cultural nuances are so different and so tough to make sense of and comprehend for somebody like me who grew up in India, lived in India all his life, with some travels here and there. And I think that is where the solutions that I kind of could come up with were not needle moving. And it was just gap in understanding the culture and the user. The same thing we saw in our work at the Nudge on the ground. If I do not spend time in the communities and speak their language and understand their cultural context, there is no way I can meaningfully, solve for the problems that we see that a user is facing, customer is facing, in our case, communities that we serve are facing. And there are repeated failures of all of this. Like admissions, we really struggled to crack admissions with the thoughts and ideas I had in mind. And the more I started listening to the team that is actually able to relate to the audience, understands, is on the ground every day, you realize they have the answers that you will never have.
Mm-hmm.
So whether it is listening to the customer, relating to the customer, or have people who can connect and relate better and listening to them, I think are the tools that I've learned to appreciate over time, and the lack of which actually caused my early failures in admissions and twice large failures in InMobi and Google in cracking Japan as a market.
Well, thank you for sharing that. It takes a lot to be open and vulnerable and transparent about the failures we've had that have,
Oh, yeah.
in the long term, have made us better people, better leaders. So thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah. And on what has really surprised me in what we were able to do, Nitin, I think I remember the third, fourth week of March 2020 when the COVID lockdown was announced in India. Uh, Give has always been a retail fundraising platform, right? Like we encourage people to come to our website and donate money to the nonprofits and causes and campaigns they care about.
Mm-hmm.
When COVID happened, uh, it just felt like we should spring in action and do whatever in our powers we can.
Mm-hmm.
And the first thing we did is we made a campaign online to say we'll get migrant workers back home. Uh, Very soon we realized that in the hospitals you need PPE kits and all the other stuff. Then we realized that corporates are looking for partners where they can deploy their capital for COVID response. And we said, look, we historically haven't taken CSR money,
Mm-hmm.
but this is not time for what we have done and not done in the past. We have been supporting corporates in many other ways in the past. Let's start supporting them with CSR and deploy money for COVID. I think very quickly, when I say quickly, I mean days, not weeks.
Sure.
Right? One Friday we start a campaign. By Monday morning, we say institutions are coming on board. By Wednesday, we say we need a proper guidance on how to respond to COVID. By Sunday, you have an advisory board. By Monday, you have a steering committee. Like all this happened very, very quickly.
Matter of hours. Yeah.
Uh, yeah, it was just moving insanely fast. But I think what happened during that time is, and unfortunately, COVID second wave happened, which was worse than the first one by a
Yes.
big order of magnitude. Over a period of 1.5 years, we saw that give used to be like we were donating about something in the range of 60, 70 crores a year,
Wow.
right, to our partners before COVID. And it
Wow.
became 400 crores in first wave and then 1,250 crores in second wave
Wow.
that year. All put together, just COVID response, we ended up deploying about close to about 1,200, 1,300 crores, $150 million.
Wow.
And while it was a surprise that we were able to receive so much donations from people globally, whether it was Indian diaspora in companies in US, tech companies, US companies, but deploying money in India COVID, or it was Indian community coming forward to donate, corporates coming forward to donate, global foundations, we got large amount of support. But I think the machinery also, when we were a 60 people company, and at some point I had 180 full-time employees with 120 of them volunteers, right?
Wow.
So people just came and started working with Give full time. Many of these are people who are working in a $10 billion company as a chief operating officer, or a startup CEO who raised money, but now they can't do anything. So they are working here. Dozens of people like that contributed without any money and working 15 hours, 18 hours, sometimes even 19 hours in a day in the middle when the waves were at their peak. And I saw so much energy, right? Whether it is nonprofits on the ground, we were able to support with that money, who actually delivered everything from PPE kits to food packets to oxygen plants to concentrator services at home, where an Ola cab would come and deliver an oxygen concentrator and will take it back without any charge, to even funding very, very sort of heartbreaking stuff like sponsoring vehicles to take dead bodies from COVID wards of
Yeah.
hospitals to the cremation grounds and burial grounds. Uh, all kinds of work was done by nonprofits that we were able to support, with two-thirds of the organization that was volunteers, with advisory board which had all doctors, pharma, distribution experts, to a steering committee, everybody doing it for free. So I think that was something that taught not just Give on how to run collective, collaborative programs. It also, I think, built the aspiration for the development sector, I feel, in India, where after that we saw at least a dozen giving collectives or collaborative action programs in the country. And they all felt that coming together allows you to raise the profile of the problem to larger set of people, and that enabled them to raise money from diverse actors and support real work on the ground with so many NGOs in a manner that was not done in India before. And I think COVID enabled that opportunity for us and the ecosystem to think of collaborative giving and collaborative impact on the ground, collective impact, and all these variants of collaboration came forward. So,
I remember that time, and I remember what Give did for the community, for India, for just uplifting those spirits, and how we as a community came together to help out people that didn't really have a choice. And again, thank you for you, for the team, and for everyone that volunteered their time, talent, and capital to help save the number of lives that were in those dire times. And you know i I was there in the midst of things, sending mass, sending uh, money, sending help, uh, many
Yeah.
of us stood up, but what Give did and what you guys did was amazing. And I know several prominent uh, celebrities and people in the community that rallied behind the cause, and the
Yeah.
numbers were amazing. But I say, to give it a positive spin, never let a crisis go to waste. And I think we really came together as a community and did everything in our power and ability to really make a change and save lives. So, congratulations to you
I
and to
think,
all of us.
yeah, thank you. No, I keep saying that the human spirit
Yes,
survived and fought
yes,
COVID very well, but normally takes 100x the time to solve a problem like this.
true.
Humanity solved in very, very small period of time. But I also worry about that. We shouldn't need a COVID to come together
Yes,
and solve the social problems we face. There are so many similar silent uh, pandemics we have right
mm,
now. And if we are able to keep that sense of urgency and the spirit of coming together to solve the problems, we would actually create a very, very different world very, very quickly. And, anyways, work to be done in that area.
couldn't agree more. And again, I can't think of a better person and a better leader to do it than you. And I'm really glad in many ways that you're doing what you're doing to uplift the community, to uplift humanity as a whole. So, thank you for not being selfish, but being selfish in many ways. Thanks a lot.
Thank you. Thanks, Nathan.
Thanks, Atul, for sharing that. And that brings us to my favorite part of the show, the one-line life lessons. And I would love for you to share your one-line life lessons with us.
Awesome. Yeah, it is a tough one to distill what you believe in just one lines.
Yes.
I think there are a few things that resonate with me. The first one is that I keep saying that we need to pass all the key decisions we take through first principles filter. It's so easy to get drowned in all the norms and practices and principles and approaches and frameworks people put. But I think somewhere in that we lose the first principle. So that's my first one. It's heavily underrated, I feel. The second one is something that a friend of mine shared, which I've carried with me, resonated, which is look for people with fire in the belly, and almost everything else can be taught. Uh, Really resonates with me as we look for people, especially in startups where you're trying to take risk in building something. The third one is what very well known, what Gandhiji said: be the change that you want to see. We try to do that in everything we do at Nudge and Give. The last one, something that I started putting when I started the nudge, which Margaret Mead once said, that never doubt that a small group of committed people can change the world. Indeed, that's the only thing that ever has. Uh, and I think what we and many of the nonprofits are doing kind of is to take uh, you know, a small group of people and bringing them together to bring large scale change. And we hope it resonates. The last one is what Theodore Roosevelt said, which is, I mean, it's obviously a longer speech out of which this line that it's man in the arena that
Mm.
really counts resonates. And I keep reminding myself that, we are a bunch of people in the arena uh, fighting the battle, and it's important to have that level of ownership to the cause and the problem. So these are my few top ones.
Thanks, Atul. And, it provides that clarity, that vision for the team coming from the leadership. So having that clarity, having that vision, having that big picture, but really distilling it down to, as you said, it's extremely difficult. But it reminded me of one of those quotes that are attributed to Mark Twain. That
Mhm.
I'm sorry, I didn't have time to write you a short note, so I'm writing you a long one. So
Yeah, yeah, very, very powerful. We struggle with that as leaders, as in terms of our communication as well, right?
Mhm.
When we don't have clarity, we start writing a long note and trying to explain everything. Then we realize that, look, we really thought it through. So
Yes. Atul, thank you so much for making the time. I know you have a lot going on, and really appreciate you sharing your journey, your story, and more importantly, the one line life lessons with us. Thank you so much for doing what you do. And again, continued congratulations and good luck for many, many more successes to help you help many millions of lives and transitioning them, not just them, but generations to come. So thank you.
thank you so much, Nitin. Lovely being on this show.